right? Everything's rigged. Everything I don't like is rigged. Everything that makes me look bad is rigged. The lighting in the dressing room, rigged. It's something that's on everyone's mind. And so actually, if you Google rigged, you find out that apparently elections are the only thing less corrupt than the NBA. Apparently, there's rigged NBA. So what do we mean by rigged? Since rigged meaning is obviously the number one question. What do we mean? We mean an election whose result does not end up or does not reflect the popular will. Okay, so as we go forward, I want to talk to you about sort of two ways one could rig an election. And the reason I think this is important is because we worry about these things. We think about these things. And maybe sometimes we place our worries and our confidences in places that maybe we should rethink. And so we're going to talk about two places in the election process where you could kind of sneak in and cause some trouble. And then you guys can decide for yourselves sort of, what do you think the likelihood is of rigging elections one way or the other? As you can see there, Donald Trump has recently asked for volunteers to be election observers. Now, I have not signed up for this, but I know. But John Oliver says that if you sign up for it, you get a fundraising email. So I don't know, what he means by observer, if he's going to sell tickets or how that's going to work. But we're going to talk a little bit about election observers. So I'm going to quickly talk about California elections because I think, and I know you guys are super smart and you know all this stuff, but let's do a quick reminder. A quick reminder, there is no such thing as federal vote counting, right? There is no volcano with a tunnel under it where the ballots go, where the men in the suits, count the ballots, right? That's not how it works, right? Every state just sort of reports their electoral votes to the federal government. And on the state level, the state doesn't count the ballots, right? The state just sits there and waits for the counties to tell them what happened. And as proof of this, if an election is really close and one of the candidates wants a recount, the state doesn't even do the recount. The candidate has to say exactly which county and which precinct they want the recount in, and pay for it, that's a different issue, and then have a recount. So again, there's no sort of statewide agency that oversees the actual ballot counting. It's all done locally. And that's really important because when we think about how do you rig an election, how do you rig an election on election day when you have literally thousands of different systems, thousands of different people, thousands of different machines. The other thing you should know that in California, this should give you some comfort actually, our voting machines are terrible. They're outdated, they're very old. But the one good thing about having machines from 1996 is that there's no internet involved. If you want to hack a California voting machine, you got to be sitting next to it with a speak and spell, trying to get in there. You really have to physically be there. You cannot sit in your dorm room and hack a California voting machine. That is the truth. And remember, in California, there is a law that says if you want to have an electronic machine, local government, if you want to try that, you have to have a paper trail. And that's really important, right? Because in some states, like Georgia, FYI, which is going to be kind of a mess this year, if you have electronic voting and no paper trail, you can't audit. Georgia's voting machines, for example, have electronic voting, but no paper trail. So if something weird were to happen, like say it flips for Hillary Clinton this year, no way to verify whether that was an actual movement of the voters or that was an actual rigging of the system. So the Secretary of State has to approve all the machines that are used by local governments. That's another sort of restriction on the machines that we can use. And they're very onerous, and it's not Alex Padilla's fault. It's a bunch of legal restrictions. So before any local government can use any machine, they have to get approval from the Secretary of State. And this is an enormous pain. Right now, there's only 6 right, that are able to be used. And they're allowing some pilot programs, but in general, they're super stingy. So our voting machines are old and not connected to the internet. Getting new ones is going to be difficult, and when we do get new ones, there will be a paper trail. So when you think about rigging elections in California, understand that we're a lot safer actually than the zeitgeist might lead us to believe. And in California, In San Francisco, for example, we use these machines. They look like paper shredders, actually. I always get a little weirded out when I put my ballot in. I'm like, is that going in the trash? It looks like a paper shredder. It's actually a scanner. We use the same machines that Oakland uses, right? Because we all have RCV. So these are the same sort of little paper shredder scanners that can count the RCV. Now, in San Francisco, for example, they pick 6 precincts. They actually do a manual count. They count what does the cartridge on the scanner say, and then versus what the paper ballots say. So there's some serious checks and balances. The truth is, though, we vote so much by mail. San Francisco is like 60% vote by mail. Statewide, it's 70% vote by mail. And the truth is, if you really wanted to screw with the system, get the vote by mail votes, right? Create fake identities and have ballots sent to your house. That would be the way. The idea that observers are on election day are going to help you is not really that good of a plan. You'd really have to, just again, if you want to do this, the absentee ballots are really the less sort of guarded way that we vote. That is a better way to. Oh, hey, Howard. That is the way, that would be the sort of way in. So again, when you're talking about elections in California, the observers are not the way to go. Oh, sorry. Okay. So again, if you wanted to rig an election in California, you would have to do it county by county. You would have to, basically, if you wanted to destroy ballots, you would have to destroy the cartridges and ballots. It's hard to do. And you probably wouldn't be able to have a huge impact just because of all of the checks and balances that we have. Okay, but there is actually a different place. The Electoral College. That is, so once the state counts out the ballots, then they decide who the winner is, and then the electoral votes go to the federal government. And this is another sort of soft spot where if you wanted to rig an election, this would be the place to go. Now, let's start with the Constitution. The Constitution says we have to elect electors in the way designated by the state legislature. And the state legislature has been and is made up of members of political parties. So what do state legislatures do? They very immediately give the power to choose electors to political parties. So the way it works in, let me just back up one second. The Electoral College, a lot of people have a lot of different reasons for these. There's, people say, oh, it's too far to travel. Like, there's all kind of BS, like, ideas about why we have one. Let's not forget, like, the basic fundamental tenet here, which is, this is from George Mason at the Constitutional Convention. He said, it would be as unnatural to refer the choice of proper character for the chief magistrate, president, to the people as it would to refer the trial of colors to a blind man. The extent of the country renders it impossible that people can have the requisite capacity to judge the respective pretensions of the candidates. George Mason, pretension expert. Do not forget, and some of you this year might be looking around going, you know what? He's on to something. We don't totally disagree here at the Commonwealth Club with all my Smarty Pants audience members. Maybe this year you go, yeah, yay, Electoral College. So in California, for example, the way it works is by October of each year, each party submits their 55 electoral their electors, basically. And so what happens is on election day, depending on who wins, and we have winner take all. In every state in America, except for Maine and Nebraska, every state in America has winner take all. And that just means whoever wins the popular vote gets all the electors. So you're voting for whomever, and that person who wins on election day, all 55 of those electors that they submitted get to go to the elector party. They get to, go to the meeting. It's a meeting. Past electors are people like in 2012, Obama electors were Dolores Huerta. And locally, if you guys might remember or recognize the name Jane Morrison, of course, she was also an elector. Each party determines its own method for selecting electors. And this is really important because this is pretty much the only thing keeping people voting the way they're supposed to. Because if you think about it, if you picked 55 people and they weren't party regulars, they weren't people you could rely on as good Democrats or Republicans, they could potentially vote for whomever. They could vote for the Kardashians. You guys know I love a map. So here's my map. All right, for those of you in the back, if you look at the red states are what we're going to call void states. Those are the airtight states where the link between the vote and the Electoral College vote is really good. Really good. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. But then there's the purple pledge states. That's states where you have to say a pledge. I pledge to do what the voters tell me to do. Then we have the shall states. California is a shall state. And then we have the GOP and Democrat. And I want you to understand the gray and the white are states where there are no rules. No rules. So let's think about this. The party gets to pick, and there are no rules about how you vote as an elector. No legal rules, let's say that. No legal rules, but how you vote as an elector versus the Electoral College. Texas. So we think about a state with a lot of Electoral College votes who maybe doesn't want to cast their Electoral College votes for Donald Trump. Maybe they'd rather cast them for literally anyone else. Ted Cruz. Oh, sir, in the front. This map is trying to explain that we do not have a uniform rule about how we connect the vote to the actual act of the electors. Because remember, the popular vote does not matter. There is no federal agency that even collects the popular vote. That's some stuff that like media organizations do. The federal government collects the Electoral College votes. That is it. That is it. They're done. So I'll give you an example of the void states. So remember, so the red states, those four, in those states, well, let me back up. Think about this. If someone came to you and said, all right, you guys might remember this when you were little, back when parents would leave their kids alone. I know, weird. When my parents would leave, they would go out to like dinner with their friends, and they'd be like, you guys be in bed by 10. You'd be like, okay. Or what, right? You shall be in bed by 10. Okay, no worries. That's the dilemma of passing laws when it comes to the Electoral College, because by the time the thing has happened, it has already happened. And the reason the void states are so important is because they stop it at the beginning. They don't say, hey, go to bed by 10. They say, if you're not in bed by 10, someone's going to jump out of the closet and bonk you on the head and put you to sleep at 10. Like they build in the remedy right there. So, for example, what they say, this is an example from Utah. They say, basically, if an elector casts a vote that is contrary to the popular vote, their vote is void. It is considered a resignation of your job as an elector, and they record a better good vote for the vote that is reflective of the popular vote. So those four states, they basically say, if you even try, we're going to, on the front end, prevent you. All right. The pledge states are adorable. They say, the pledge states say, electors have to take an oath. I hereby promise that I will be in bed by 10. No worries. But there's no repercussions. And even if there were, it's kind of, the deal is done. When your parents get home and they say, oh, well, you were up till 2, well, you've already been up at 10, right? The damage is done. The electoral votes have been cast and counted, right? So these pledge states, again, remember, this is purple. In these states, you just have to take a pledge, and there doesn't appear to be a ton of enforcement. And then in the shall states, California is a shall state, so we use California's statute here. California says electors shall vote for that person. You shall be in bed by 10, young lady. But again, no repercussions. And again, even if there were, it's after the fact. So to bring it back, we have a map of, aside from the red, a lot of issues with the Electoral College and whether or not they have to vote the way that the popular vote goes. Now, have people done this before in history? Yes, they're called faithless electors, and we've had it happen almost 200 times in history. But it has never swung a presidential election. Usually it's like some sort of protest vote, right? Because you know your guy's going to totally win. You know Nixon's going to totally win, so I'm going to cast my vote for Goldwater because I can. But in this year, depending on how crazy people want to be, this is a way where you could actually have an impact on the vote. I will leave you with this, and we can start the rest of it. And I know this is a little wordy, so I'm sorry for the people in the back, and I won't read the whole thing to you. But remember, people have been trying to reform the Electoral College basically since it was passed. So this is from a Senate committee from 1826. They immediately started trying to reform the Constitution. And they basically say, after the first time we did this Electoral College thing, the electors, dang it, started promising that they were going to vote the way the voters wanted them to. And that stinks. That's not what we asked for. They say, electors, they're not independent or in superior characters, which they were intended to be. Superior characters, they were intended to be. They're not left to the exercise of their own judgment. On the contrary, they give their vote or bind themselves to give it according to the will of their constituents. They have degenerated into mere agents in a case which requires no agency, and where the agent must be useless if he is faithful and dangerous if he is not. This year's danger is here. And look, no one wants any kind of sort of constitutional crisis. But if there's anything to be worried about in terms of rigging an election, it's not about what's happening on election day. It's about what happens after. Anyway, thanks.